Welcome to the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast, proudly brought to you by the Great Canadian Training and Consulting Company. Thank you for joining us today in our search for what makes a great communicator. I'm your host, Joel Silverstone, and every episode we'll be speaking with leaders and experts on how they were able to use their communication skills to inspire, create trust, collaboration, and influence others all in a respectful manner. How did they do it? What did they do to get better? How did they adapt? Where did they fail? Listeners and viewers, if you are looking to improve your communication skills and take those steps to being the next great leader in business, you're in the right place. Enjoy the podcast. We can all agree that we all want to feel appreciated and we want to feel respected. True. So let me ask you this. As a leader, how do you communicate and model that to your teams and clients? Well, in this episode, we've got Alexa Nick with us, and she's going to guide us on the foundations that create trust, what effect listening intently has on others, and why balancing logic with storytelling, well, why that matters. Alexa Nick began her career as a management consultant. She then pursued her goals of entrepreneurship by founding and launching myPractice, which is a virtual learning platform. Alexa now is a consulting partner at Deloitte and the strategy and transformation lead in the Toronto office. Alexa is also involved with the Morrisette Institute for Entrepreneurship, which enables entrepreneurship as the future growth engine of Canada. And she also supports the efforts of the Ivey Alumni Association, Ivey Women's in Leadership, and the Leader Project. Boy, Alexa is busy. This is an insightful episode on empathy, authenticity, and the communication skills needed to build trust. Let's meet Alexa Nick. Alexa Nick, it is so good to see you. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
It is totally my pleasure, Joel. It's always great to work with you and to see you again, connect and chat.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I have worked together, traveled together because of work, yeah. and we for about like 20 years now, almost.
It's a total roller coaster ride, and it's as exciting and as fun as you would expect.
Yeah, it has been. It has been. And one of the reasons I want to have you on the show today is, first off, you've always been a great leader and champion around communication skills. And so we're going to learn a bit more from a leader who has been a consultant, a entrepreneur, and now a partner about how you have adapted your communication skills and what you've seen over the past few years. Most importantly, what I've always been impressed is your ability to be deliberate, and specifically being deliberate about doing the right thing. What's so rare about leadership is when leaders don't just give constructive feedback, but they also give positive feedback, to take that moment to give recognition. And it wasn't just like a high five or, way to go. It's like a way to go because, and there's a genuineness, like you've parked everything, put everything aside, taken a few minutes out, make direct eye contact and said, here's why I thought this rocked or this was so good. And even taking the time to even write a card or write a note. And you've done this for many people, and I've seen the effect that it has.
Well, so very gracious.
Well, so let's start there. Let's start with that. Is this a conscious decision that you have made to try to do the right thing and be deliberate about that?
Yeah, and for me, about doing the right thing is really about unlocking people's potential, right? So I really feel like my role as a leader is to help them develop and evolve. And so I'm very anchored around, making sure that what I see, I can acknowledge, and what I hear, I can play back, and really work with the person holistically, right? Really, really think about what they want out of their career and make them accountable for that. So for me, doing the right thing connects all those dots.
What you just said there about, what I see and what I hear, what I see and what I hear, and play it back.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we struggle sometimes in how to give genuine recognition. Is people don't necessarily realize that they did something good. Yeah. And then when you're able to say, hey, this is what I saw and this is what I heard you do. And the person kind of, as you said, it's unlocking their potential when they go, oh, I did that? Moi? Me? Come on.
Well, so it's fascinating because for me, that is how it's not only how I give feedback, but it's also how I coach people to work in their environment. So let me give you an example.
Mm,
Number one for communication is listening. And so whenever
mm,
I talk to someone about how they can become a better consultant or business person, and even just person, right, is listening is key. And so the first
yeah,
thing is about listening intensely and deliberately, and and then really thinking about what resonates and feeding that back, right? And so when I tell people like listen to your client, tell them that they've been heard, tell them that you understand, right? That shows a level of empathy. And so not only am I coaching them, but I'm also modeling that behavior with them by saying, hey, this is what I saw and heard you do, and that then just
right.
shows them how to apply it again.
Which is so good because communication skills or soft skills is so
Yeah,
ambiguous.
yeah,
And you could do an e-learning about
yeah.
listening, or you could read a book about listening. But when someone is demonstrating, and again, how it
Yeah.
feels. So I'm going to show you how it feels when you're actually being listened to, and show you the effect that it has. Then yeah, that
Yeah.
resonates. That makes sense.
So even tactically, some of the now that I call them my kids, but they're the young people
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
coaching, I really ask them to listen and be very deliberate in taking notes. And I tell them there's
Mm.
gold in the words that your client is saying to us. So take it down and then take exactly what they've said and feed it back to them because they'll be like, they'll hear it again and they'll go, but like, yeah, you get me. And so it's the same thing when you're coaching people, right? And so
Right.
that is such a core skill, and every time I launch a new project or I'm talking to my team, I'm like, this is the one thing that I ask you to do is really listen, take really clear notes because we're going to go back to those notes
Right.
and we're going to dissect it basically, right? Because it's very like it's all in there. The client has told us everything we need to know. And in the same way, like, I'm going to demonstrate that with how they behave in a project setting or a client setting, and then I'm going to coach them in the moment and say, hey, you did this, you said this, you really hit the nail when you demonstrated this knowledge. And so for them it's like the same
Yeah.
feeling, like, wow, you heard me say that, you actually like listen to that, and you're acknowledging it. So for me those little moments are again gold, right?
It is gold that and listening intently, as you
Yeah.
say. Like we think, oh, I'm active listening. It's not active
No.
listening. It's listening
Yeah.
intently. It's listening deliberately, and then taking
Yeah.
notes. Which I think, yeah, I agree that if you want to listen to really keep you
Yeah.
focused on listening, that's a great exercise to do. It's a great muscle
Yeah.
memory to start taking notes because you're training your brain to really listen for, as you said, for those golden moments, and it changes people because they feel well, empathize
Mhm.
with, that
Mhm.
they were
Mhm. Mhm.
heard, which is what we all want. We all want to feel
Yeah.
heard. It's what,
Yeah.
so what we're
Yeah.
fighting for.
Well, and the other layer
Um,
to that, Joel, is
yeah,
and it's not that I want them to be robotic about it, right? And
right.
the time between the listening session and feeding it back potentially. So even in a proposal or in a summary document, it's that reflection between, right? Thinking
Mm,
about things like, what does that really mean to the client? I wonder how the client feels about their situation, and weaving that back in terms of how you feed that back. And they've seen it. I've demonstrated this early in my career, how we go into discovery sessions with clients, and then they see how the summary that comes back is just like, oh, that's totally clear. Because in the end, it's what the client said, but then you're also saying, here's what I think it means to you. And then you have a great dialogue with the client
right.
to validate that.
This sounds like kind of leading into my next
Hmm.
question, which is about
Yeah,
trust.
yeah,
that sounds like that's when you are able to listen intently to the emotions and the logic that someone is giving to you and be able to say, this is what I
Hmm.
heard and this is what I
Hmm.
saw. Whether you're speaking to your someone on your team or you're speaking to a client, it creates
Yeah.
trust. And this is something that's is this something that's on your journey
Yeah.
to the sort of the evolving trust?
Yeah, yeah. And so trust for me is obviously terribly important and such a foundation. And and so when I work with people, my goal is to demonstrate that I'm trying to build trust with them, and then also making them see how they can build trust in their interactions. And that is, for me, that is what I can do for others and making sure that they
Hmm.
can do that. And so I see it as a bit of a framework. I love this framework that Frances Fry has put together. She's a Harvard Business School professor, and she's brilliant, in my view. And that the trust is really around. There's three. It's a triangle. So trust is in the center,
Okay.
and there's 3 points
Right.
of the triangle. There's authenticity on one point, empathy on the second point, and then logic on the third point. And so if I can
Nice.
demonstrate these three things, then I can build trust. And if I can help
Right.
others see how they can build trust using that kind of a framework, then all of a sudden, I'm able to obviously coach and evolve that person and help them empower them towards that. So for me, my journey around that
Yeah.
beautiful triangle is is that my 25-year career has led me to embrace authenticity. So there was a period of time, I have
Mm.
to say, Joel, in my younger career where I did try to pretend to be something I wasn't, and that didn't
Right.
serve me very well. I mean, it probably served me in the business setting, but it didn't serve me from a personal fulfillment. And so I realized very
Right.
quickly that authenticity was a very important pillar to me. And so
Yeah.
I do feel like that is a pretty strong foundation for me in terms of those 3 points. Um, so I that is the most natural for me. Empathy, honestly, because of a lot of the work we did together, Joel, uh, I've
Yeah.
become hyper aware of empathy, and it's not perfect. It's definitely my second strongest, if you like. I sometimes get way too much in my head, and I really have to force
Okay.
myself to empathize with another situation. But I'm very aware of it. So I guess that's good
That's
first
huge.
step, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's empathy doesn't have to be
Yeah,
beautiful, right? Empathy is
yeah,
just it's the attempt at it is already thank you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then the third one around logic is I think something
Hmm.
that we all have to continue to build, because what logic is about creating a foundation of credibility and evidence-based, fact-based decisions, data-driven, right? So it's that you have
Yeah.
to have that knowledge base to build trust. You can't you That's kind of a no a non-starter if you don't have a logic. And so that is actually very closely linked to how you communicate, because you can't
Right.
it's through communication that you relate your credibility, your knowledge, your experience. And so that's one that I continue to evolve with. And it's a journey against my entire career, because there's obviously, as a consultant, it's all fact based, right? It's very fact based, it's very evidence based, it's very
Yeah.
hypothetical driven. And then the other side is around storytelling, which you and I have done so much great work on storytelling and making sure that that's
Yeah.
leveraged in communication. But I think for me, it's about how do you leverage those two tools in the right moment, right? And so I like to think myself as a natural, or not natural, but a mm, evolved storyteller, because that's how
Yeah.
I see myself. Um, but I do think that as a business person, you really need to have a solid fact fact based communication style. So that's something that I continue to evolve. It's all about, we learned very quickly in MBA school, you have to structure around all right, so how are you going to analyze this
Mm.
problem? There's three things.
Right.
Number one, number two, number three. And it still serves me well, right? To structure your thinking in that way and allows you to communicate. At the same time, leveraging much more structured communication is helpful, but storytelling has a place too. And so I continue to evolve myself, my learning journey around
Yeah.
where do I leverage those two things and in what moments.
Well, what's interesting, Alexa, is you just demonstrated all of those skills in describing
Oh
that,
gosh.
right? Because, and it's funny because you actually started with logic
Right, right,
first. You started by saying, it's a
right,
triangle, and in the middle of the triangle is
right.
trust. So for those people that are logic
Yeah,
focused, that's what they could see that
yeah.
and hear that and go, okay,
Okay.
there's a
We need a
system here,
structure.
there's a
Totally.
formula. Yeah, this is not
Yeah,
fluff. There's a system
yeah,
here. There's a system here,
yeah,
right? And then authenticity. You right off the bat shared your own journey towards it. That at the beginning it was maybe a bit of imposter
yeah,
syndrome or fake it till you
yeah,
make
yeah,
it kind of
yeah,
thing, until you realize no, the best way to do it is just be
yeah,
me, and that's
yeah,
really what people are going to buy. And then empathy, you gave me some recognition there. You were empathized with that, and then brought in the
yeah.
logic. So you
Well,
demonstrated all of that, and you made it into a story.
very nice.
You took us on a
There you go.
journey. So you put it all
Yeah.
together.
Hi, I'm Joy Newhold, and we'll be right back to our interview. When I started the Great Canadian Training and Consulting Company in 2002, I never would have imagined that one day we would have a podcast. So first, I want to thank you for listening and share some really exciting information about our organization with you. For years, we have made our live instructor-led software and soft skills training, consulting, and coaching services customizable to meet the unique needs of each client and committed ourselves to a high quality of customer service. This combined to make the learning experience better for the participants and the planning process easier for the organizer. We love helping our clients so much. We also develop many additional free resources to help you along the way, and this podcast is just one of them. At greatcanadiantraining.ca, you will find our free monthly webinars, blog articles, and free downloads covering everything from building better dashboards in Excel to navigating difficult conversations and everything in between. So make sure to join us at greatcanadiantraining.ca. But for now, I better let you get back to the podcast. Please enjoy the rest of the interview.
If we want to influence someone, right? You want to be a leader. You can't just tell someone do this because that'll just be short term. Or here's the logic why you're going to do this. And it's like, okay, but that'll be short term because people need a purpose. They need to know, why am I doing this? And so when there's empathy and when there's authenticity, when you're bringing your true self to the table and being empathetic, and then giving that, and then you're pulling them in, and then you're able to give the logic. Now here's the facts that are going to support that decision.
Yeah.
That's competency. That's
It's so
trust.
good, and you're just speaking to exactly why it resonates for me, because the authenticity speaks to how I'm human, and it allows people
Hmm.
to be human as well. The logic shows it's real. I have analytical
Yeah.
foundation, analytical chops, if you like. The
Right.
third is around empathy. Is that empathy shows that I want to have and I want to build a relationship with you. And so
Yeah.
for the individual, all of a sudden they feel valued.
Yeah. It speaks to you're speaking to their
Yeah,
emotions, and you're speaking to the logical
yeah,
part of it. You're speaking to both parts of the
yeah,
brain. The this feels right, and I think this
yeah.
is right to be. I
So
know this is right.
imagine if you could use that framework
Yeah.
for your own, your own internal work, but then to help others leverage that. And I think that's my calling, is to help people, inspire people to embrace that, and to create that foundation of trust through that kind of a framework. And as I said, as I've gotten to know Francis Fry's work, it really resonates with me.
Let's talk now about one of the parts that we like to call
Yeah,
failure.
yeah,
Ta-da! And this is in every leadership
right.
journey, or in all of us. There's always that moment where something didn't go. There was a turning point. There was a failure, but we
Mm,
learned from it, and it didn't feel good at the time. But the takeaway is, from
yeah.
that. So, this is from the improv world, to celebrate our failures and not to be embarrassed by them. So, if you're ready,
Yeah.
we'd
If
love to
we
hear
need to go
your
there, we'll go
failure.
there.
Ta-da! Yeah, let's go there. Let's go there. And you can give a ta-da at the end if you want.
Ta-da. Um, so, again, on my leadership journey, if you like, I feel like I have always focused on doing the right thing. So doing the right thing for
Hmm.
me is about doing the right thing for the client, and doing the right thing for the team. And I have witnessed in the past that can sometimes go off kilter, right? And what that means is I tend to over vector to please the client at the risk
Mm,
of team. And
right.
so, and it's interesting because definitely in my early career, it was like, and especially in consulting, you do what you have to do, you over deliver, your client needs to be 100% happy, if not exceeding expectations. And sometimes what that drives
Right.
the behavior is an intensity of delivering work. And so, a few years ago, I had a situation where I over vectored on delivering to the client, and it really came back in a way that really surprised me. I had really not destroyed, but compromised some team dynamics, and and I really thought about that. And what
Yeah.
the positive that came out of that was that I started to realize that I wasn't really living true to the principles around, even authenticity, because we're only human, and so the client is
Yeah.
also human, and it's not like I
Right.
should sacrifice my team for the client. We're all human beings, and so what I've learned through that experience is to actually take a stand and push back on the client a lot more, in obviously a very respectful way, but to say, wait a minute now, this is unreasonable, and we probably should just reset and take that responsibility and not be so afraid of it, right? Like there used to be some fear around, oh my
Right.
gosh, if we're not delivering to this client's expectations, and actually taking
Yeah.
the client's expectations as gospel. It's like it's not gospel. We're all just trying to figure this out together, and let's work together to
Yeah.
figure it out. So it was actually a very poor team that had to go through that with me, but it did help me reframe how I work with my clients. So I'm not as shy about having real client conversations about how a project is going, and making them accountable for it too. It's, this is a partnership. It isn't just a one way, I'm supposed to deliver on every expectation. It's like, let's talk about how this is evolving, how this is moving forward. So, and of course, the benefit of that is that you build better client relationships, right? Because you're
I could
able
imagine.
to have that conversation, or you have the strength, or I don't even know, the authenticity to have that conversation with a client. They respect you more.
This is huge, because we avoid confrontation because we want to
Right,
please our manager, please our employee,
right,
please our client, and sometimes the other person doesn't realize that the expectations were just
yeah,
impossible. And when you have the courage, as you're talking about, have the courage to say, hang on, we need to reset, as you
hmm
say, and actually, let's talk about this. And then the client will go, oh, I did, I guess they would say, I didn't even
right,
realize
right.
that. Or,
Well, and
thank you for bringing that to
that's a
my attention.
really good point, Joel, because we make assumptions every minute of our day. And
Right.
we assume the client knows what's going on over here, and we assume the client
Yeah.
is has these ridiculous expectations. And I think that is also a big learning, is that don't assume, right? Just have the conversation, and then align.
That is such a good takeaway. Because the failure in communication is that we think other people can read
Right.
our minds, that they have
Right.
ESP. Can't they see I'm
Right.
stressed? Don't they know I'm working weekends and evenings and
Yeah.
and my team is working 24/7 on this? Don't they know? No, they they can't read your mind. They don't
Well, and the
know.
other benefit of that, for me anyway, is that I've come to realize, and you start to realize the kinds of clients you don't want to work with, right? Because if there isn't a humanity and an empathy coming back from the client, it's like, okay, well, maybe there's a misalignment of values here, and I've become much more
Yeah,
confident in saying no, you know, to certain clients and their expectations. I think early in my career it was always yes, and now it's, with confidence
right.
and experience, you learn to say no.
Well, it sounds like there has to be mutual respect. And
Exactly.
if there's mutual respect, it flows a lot more. It doesn't feel so much like work. And it goes back to the trust that if I can actually, they'll get better results if there's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
Alexa,
Joel,
this has been, yeah, this has been phenomenal.
always.
Uh, being
Yeah.
deliberate, talking about trust, the authenticity, the empathy, and the logic to get towards trust. Having the difficult conversation because we make assumptions is so important. To have the courage to have that, because it changes the relationship when you could have the courage. It's not a difficult conversation.
Hmm.
It's just challenging in that moment, but it changes
Hmm.
the relationship for the
Hmm.
better.
Yeah. And just on that, Joel, I just want to reiterate that isn't just about the client, it's also about team, right? You don't know what's happening in people's
Right.
lives. You do have to have a bit of patience, and especially in this pandemic reality, it is surprising to
Yeah.
me how some leaders are make assumptions about what's happening to people, and it's pretty, it's a hidden reality sometimes that people are living through. So we need to have a lot of empathy and patience and self-compassion for this. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Alexa, it has been a pleasure and a joy to discuss with you today. Before we send you off, where can we connect or find out
Yeah.
more about Alexa
Yeah.
Nick?
Well, first of all, Joel, I can say that it has been my pleasure. And as much as it has been your pleasure, it's a double my pleasure. So it's always wonderful to work
Yeah.
with you. So thank you. And I really appreciate this opportunity to have this chat. Yeah, love for people to
Thank you.
reach out. Not a problem at all. I'm pretty accessible and somewhat responsive these days. LinkedIn is best. Alexa Nick on LinkedIn. Anytime.
Terrific. Alexa, thank you so much for being a guest on the Great Canadian Leadership
Thank you,
Podcast.
Joel.
And now it's time for our 3 stars, nos 3 étoiles. These are the 3 takeaways from today's episode that you can start to put into practice. Number 1, give real recognition. Say, you did this well because. It's the because that's important. When you give positive feedback and just say, hey, way to go, or a high five, you need to be able to say what they did well and why it matters. And then that person will feel recognized and valued. Number 2, listen intently and reflect. What were the facts and feelings? Before you respond, before you give feedback, what was important to that person and what did they care about? Number 3, logic. This is the foundation to every story and conversation you have. If you want to build trust, it's not with opinions. It's facts and logic that shows your knowledge and competence. So what's the next step? Well, if you're not sure where you can apply these 3 stars in your life and in business, try this. The next time you're talking with someone and they're sharing some information with you, whether it's a client sharing details on a project or a colleague asking you for help with a task, maybe it's a friend just sharing their opinion, listen intently. And when you respond, don't just agree or jump to the solution. Start by summarizing back to them at least some of what they just told you. What did you hear that was important to them? And it's going to make it clear to them that you care about their thoughts and feelings. And it comes with the side benefit of ensuring that you're both on the same page. Thank you for joining us in our search for what makes a great communicator. If you enjoyed the show, then please leave a rating or review. even better, subscribe to the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast and make sure you don't miss another episode. Let's stay connected. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at GCT_CompuEase. And if you'd like more information, free resources, or class schedules on everything from software to soft skills training, consulting, or coaching, then go on over to greatcanadiantraining.ca. Thank you, and we will see you next episode.